Hello, today I want to talk to you about printing onto plaster. Printing onto plaster can allow you to make screen prints that you can turn into slabs. You could either build with those slabs or simply have the slab be the work itself. What you're going to need is you will need a plaster slab, you will need some kind of silk screen, and a medium to print with. I'm going to use straight up underglazes. These silk screens are commercially available, and of course you can make your own. I made a video about that already. I'm going to be using Amico underglazes because they have a high tolerance. It can go all the way up to coat 10. Make sure you test them out first. I've made some test tiles here which show the underglazes with one line, one coat, two coats, and three coats, so that you can see how they burn out if clear glaze is applied over them. That's important if you're using them to print with. So you just want to make sure when you screen print that you think about foreground, middle ground, background. You always want to do the foreground first, and anything you paint or print onto the plaster first is going to appear in the final piece in the foreground. So I want to make sure I do the foreground first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select, first thing I'm going to do is select the underglaze color that I want to use. Avocado looks good since I'm doing a plant. And maybe I'm also going to do a green and a brown for the tree. This is light green, looks nice, and maybe this light brown. These are the test tiles on top of here, so you can see what they can look like. So these commercial silk screens come with a rough side and a smooth side. I printed with the smooth side down. I'm going to create a Calla Lily in the foreground. Actually, before I do anything, I'm gonna take a piece of newspaper and just fold it until it fits on the plaster slab so that I can see what the size of the slab is going to be, especially if I'm making a cup out of this, which is what I plan on doing. So let's see, it's going to be very narrow. It's going to be a little bit smaller than these sanitizing wipes. So that's important to know. So I'm going to take the thing I want to appear in the front of the picture first, and then later I'm going to silk screen a tree from this. Can't really see, but if you hold this up to the light, you can see the kind of picture image that this is going to be printing. So the Calla Lily's here. I'm going to put it off to the side. I could tape this down, but I'm just going to hold it. I'm going to take the avocado underglaze and clean this off. I'm going to use this rubber rib to print with it. So what I'm going to do, kind of load it up a little bit with underglaze on the edge, like this. And then I'm just going to drag this down. I can't really see, so I'm going to do that. So I'm going to hold the screen down and take the underglaze and just pull it across and then lift it up, and I print it out, the Calla Lily. Okay, easy as that. Now, if I want this to be a different color than green, I can do that. So after it dries a little bit, I can fill in this part that appears white here with white underglaze, and it will print that color next time. Let's go ahead and do that. So we've got white here, yellow here. So now if I don't have to paint perfectly in the lines in this part here. See, I'm covering up what I printed before, but because that was printed first, that is going to appear. So as long as I stay in the lines, this should end up being like a flower with a, I'm basically filling in the background now of that flower. It can be a little confusing at first, but if you've ever done printmaking, it will make perfect sense to you. If I figure out how to video edit properly, I promise I'll speed this part up and you won't even hear me. And if you are hearing me now, it's because I didn't figure out how to do that. Okay, before I ruin this middle part here, I'm gonna fill it in with yellow. The nice thing about underglazes versus slips is that they're very brightly colored. So you can imagine what the fired color will look like instead of, I mean, you can see what the fired color will look like instead of imagining it. Okay, all right. And if I want a little visual interest, I will take a different green and fill in the gaps in the leaves here. So I used avocado, now I could use the light green. Here's the difference between them. Just to have a little nuance. I'm gonna use the same brush here, don't judge. It's like color block printing in a way, except manually filling in. And if I didn't do this, whatever color either the clay or the next thing I print over this would end up filling in these spots that I'm coloring in right now. Okay, so that's important. Okay. Next thing I want to do is print this tree. So this silk screen, again, you can't see it, but it has a number of trees and shrubs and leaves. And again, I'm going to find the tree I want, and I'm going to put the smooth side facing down. Now this tree has a lot of, yeah, so I'm gonna place the tree up a little bit higher and see if I can create a horizon out of this tree here. Now what I'm gonna do is reverse this. I'm gonna use the light green and then the dark avocado. I'm gonna print with the where's the lid at? Sorry, I'm a bit confused. I'm gonna print with the light green, and I'm going to fill in with the avocado. Okay, so I'm gonna do something a little different here. I'm gonna print, I'm gonna separate out the trunk from the rest of the part I'm gonna print and see if I can get that to be brown. Just rinse off this brush here. So I'm gonna place the underglaze here and then I'm gonna drag it down. It might not be enough, but I'm gonna try. Nope, not enough. Let's try that again. I'm gonna take it and just drag it down. Okay, get rid of the extra. Now, I'm going to take the light green and print with that. This one's a little more liquid than I like. There's a silkscreen thickening medium you can use. So what I'm gonna do here is hold this down and drag that upwards. And again, and again, again. I'm going to also do that down here. I'm a bit concerned about how thin this is. I'm going to use the, actually, let's leave it. All right, I'm gonna pull this up. I've got my tree. Yeah, it's not quite what I was hoping, but it's all right. So what I'm gonna do now is fill in what's gonna happen is there's little gaps here that didn't print. Because of how the silkscreen was designed, and now it's nice because it'll be a high contrast when this green that I'm putting on now shows through. Hopefully, if I'm not totally just smudging everything out. You can also do free painting. So, you know, if I were to decide that I didn't want anything else in the foreground, I could take this and kind of continue this this horizon line across. Okay. It's gonna look weird because the lines are not gonna, it's gonna go through it. So yeah, so now all I have to do is fill in the colors really. and textures. I'm going to contrast the greens again to kind of now I'm building up layers, so even if I paint over the flower that's here, it's still going to be first later when I remove the slab. Black for contrast. It might seep through. Depends on how many spaces are left. Alrighty. So now I have to decide what kind of sky I'm gonna have. I was thinking about using some more decals, some Underglaze decals, if I can find them. So Underglaze decals are basically Underglaze printed onto paper. I could potentially do something with these. That's an artistic choice. Maybe not. So now I need to fill in the background. You know, if I was kind of feeling like I'm in grade school again, so I'm gonna do like a sun. Save a little bit of this here, I'm going to dilute it. Mix a little white in there. So I'm just mixing colors and basically starting to create the background here. Okay, now the fun part. What I'm going to do is I'm going to place clay slip over here. I'm going to press it down and I'm going to wait for my slab to dry. As it dries, I'm going to compress the surface so that it sticks well to this, and then I will lift it up all together. So here we have just a white stoneware clay body slip, not particularly well blended even, but what I'm gonna do is apply it onto the surface here and hope that I don't trap any air bubbles. And the thickness of the slip, of course, matters. How thick the slip is itself. This is great. It's lumpy, but it's a good consistency because it's not gonna flow off of the plaster slab here, or the plaster board here, but it even though it's lumpy, it's nice. I can build up thickness so that I can have a slab that's substantial, because again, I do envision this being a cup. So I'm gonna keep spreading the slip out. So I'm pushing out the corners and edges more so that it's thick there too. And I'm adding slip and spreading it out. I'm not scraping the surface because that would ruin your painting or print. Paint print. So what I want is a thick, even layer. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of lumps in this clay, but it doesn't really matter as long as there aren't any air pockets facing down. Okay, I'm going to compress this after it becomes more like moist clay, and as it enters the leather hard stage, I'll compress it even more with the rib. But for now, it's kind of like cake batter or icing, and I'm just building up the layers and spreading it out flat. Okay, so that's it for now. What I'm gonna do is allow this to dry for a day or two, and then I'll take my rib and I'll compress the clay, and then we'll figure out a way to use this. Hey guys, a day has passed, so let's see what's going on here. So the clay slip is now firm, but it's still soft enough to kind of alter. So I'm just gonna see if it'll come up here. There we go. So everything's been reversed. So of course, if you use text, you want to make sure that it's going in reverse. And most of the underglaze came up. Let's see if you guys can see that. So now I have my underglaze printed slab that I can use to do other things. In this case, I'm going to make a cylinder out of it. So this is the last stage of this process. I'm going to make something with the slab. Some people use the slab as is. I've seen people make wall plaques and clocks and cheese boards and that kind of thing, but what I want to do is make a cup out of it. And if you'll remember, I created a template early on to see what size cup that I could make, and so it's a little bit too small to fit on this bottle. It's a little too large to fit on this bottle. So what I'm going to do, the bottle's an armature, is I'm going to roll this out a little bit and hope I don't lose too much of my design. The more I roll out the slab, the kind of more likely the pattern is to be ruined. Also, the underglaze can stick to the plastic when I pull the plastic out, but hopefully it doesn't happen. So what I'm gonna do to get a little bit of a longer slab is I'm just gonna roll out from the middle a little bit, and I'm gonna carefully peel this back and repeat on the other side. Keep your workstation tidy. Do the same thing on here, just from the middle out. Oops. Just created a divot, I think. Flip it and do it one more time. I keep peeling the plastic off each time because I don't want it to, well, number one, to stick, and number two, to stretch out. I did get some plastic texture here. I'll be able to get away with it. This is a little bit longer now. It should be able to wrap around this wine bottle. Lost a little bit of color there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to wrap my wine bottle in plastic so that I can use the wine bottle as an armature without the clay slab sticking to it. I try to remove all the air. I'm going to tie off the top. There's a rubber band here, conveniently. Just wrap it around. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a slab of clay and I'm going to use that as the base. I'm going to make sure I'm within shot here. I'm going to cut through the bottom. So now I have a base for my future cup. This, I'm not going to give it any straight edges except for maybe the bottom. So if you want life to be a little bit easier for you, what you can do if you're making a cup, especially if you have a bevel cutting tool, which I do not, what you can do is you can bevel the top edge for the drinking edge for your cup now. Maybe do it manually here. There's some tools that have a bevel cutter on them, and you could run that along straight down like this to get a bevel cut. I might leave this. What I am gonna do is give it a straight edge on the bottom. So I'm looking around. I have maybe this bottom. Just kind of trying to get a straight edge so that it sits. Okay, so I'm gonna cut there. So clay has this interesting quality. It has something called plastic memory. So before I create my cup out of this slab, I'm going to roll this slab into a tight cylinder. Okay. The reason I'm doing that is because the slab's going to remember that it was straight, and it sometimes can crack on the seam because of that. So what I'm doing is rolling it up like this to give it a new memory. Okay, that memory is going to be that it's supposed to compress instead of expand. So in the kiln, it's less likely to open up and create an opening on this joining seam. Okay. Now I'm going to take the slab, open this back up, and I'm going to wrap the slab around the bottle like this. What I'm going to do to make sure that the slab is holding on to the base is I'm going to push underneath like this to force the wall onto the base. I'm going to start with the far side, and I'm going to push it underneath like this, and then I'm going to come around and draw this together and decide whether I'm cutting the sun or the tree. And I think we're going to cut the tree. So I'm going to create meaning that I'm going to create an overlap here, and I need to decide where I'm going to cut, because there's more than enough clay now to fit around the bottle. So what I'm going to do is hold tight, open up the plastic, and I'm going to cut at 45 degrees angle. Down this way. Okay. Then I'm going to open up, and I'm going to take out the waste clay. I'm going to have a slab on the inside of one side, the outside of the other. Now I'm going to put them back together to see if they fit. If they don't, I can cut again. I'm going to cut again. They don't really fit very well. So it could be a little more precise. And open up again, take out the excess from the inside and the outside. This is still doesn't fit on the bottom. I'm going to cut it again, and I'm pushing it tight. I want it to be really tight. It's part of the problem here. Let's see. Patience. There's no need to rush through these things. So now I could slip and score. I think I'm going to just paint a little bit of slip into the seam. The clay is pretty damp. I don't know that it would benefit from a lot of scoring right now. So I'm going to paint a little bit of slip. Move the plastic out of the way and apply the two sides together. I'm going to use the plastic again. The plastic I like because it allows me to to compress without marring the pattern. So I'm gonna wrap plastic around. And I'm gonna compress. I'm also gonna lift this up. See what's going on with the base. The base needs to be joined, so I'm gonna press it inward. If the outside wall is holding the base, it's gonna be much stronger and less likely to crack than if the wall is sitting on top of the base. So what I do is kind of pinch it in so that it has a really good hold, and then I kind of knock it inward with my hand. Okay. Create like a foot in a minute. So I'm using the plastic again. So the seam here, I'm gonna kind of press, and again with the plastic there to join them. That allows them to be joined without me smearing everything. Okay, I'm gonna get a small wear board. So here's a wear board. I'm gonna carefully remove the plastic, place this on the wear board. Now, what we need to do is we need to remove the bottle from here. So I'm going to get the rubber band off. I'm going to unravel the plastic. Now I can't leave this on here because clay shrinks as it dries and it would get stuck in the bottle. So I'm gonna pull the bottle up and out and then do the same thing with the plastic. I'm just gonna carefully peel it back off of the clay. Clay is very wet. I'm gonna do it over here where it's not as risky. On the side without a seam, and then make my way over. Okay, so it's very, very delicate right now. What I would do is close up the seam on the inside. I like to do that by painting slip into the seam. You can also reinforce it with a coil, but for this one, the seam is pretty tight already from all the compression with the plastic. So I'm just gonna paint some slip. And then I'm also going to paint slip around the perimeter of the base. I can put a foot on later by just pressing the inside up. So that's pretty much it for now. And it for us, I would recommend waiting until it's leather hard to do some more refining on the edges, smoothing. And also I could cut this edge straight if I wanted to, but I kind of like the irregularity of it. So yeah, that's it. So good luck with your printmaking endeavors on plaster. It can be really fun. And for me, it's easier to decorate a surface that is horizontal, that's flat, and then erect it, then to paint on something that's three-dimensional. All right, guys, that's it.